Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the JRE Review. Today, we are reviewing Ian Edwards with Joe Rogan, one of Joe's favorite comedians and hilarious guy that opens for Joe all the time. Joe picks on him for being a vegan, and he's always falling asleep. But Ian Edwards really is one of those super underrated genius comics. Absolutely fantastic. This is podcast 1324. I think it was from Thursday. And let's get this one started. So Ian has a new Netflix special coming out. I think this may be his first one. It's the first special on Netflix that I know of. He may have other specials that recorded or in other areas, but good for him. Very excited. It does seem like there's a lot of stand-up specials coming out, and you might be like, oh, we're kind of saturated, but that's not really true. People don't say that about movies, you know. It's like the Avengers is great. You know, they're making great movies all the time, but they're certainly making more movies now than they made in the 1950s. So as things get more popular, they just make more of them. It just means you got to watch more, or I would say if you're spoiled for choice, like we are today, be more choosy with what you're watching. If you find yourself sat there watching 16 and Pregnant, maybe reevaluate your watching styles. You know, they have those shows like the cooking shows. There's like a glass blowing show on Netflix, whatever. If you're into it, great. But sometimes people just seem to watch those, at least I do. I catch myself watching those just so my brain isn't working. I just staring like I'm not getting anything out of it. I don't even know why I just spent 30 minutes watching it. So yeah, I think that's the takeaway. Be more selective and watch more of the stand-up, because why not watch things that make you laugh? I'm sure his is going to be good. It actually came out, I think it was last night. Yeah, it came out. So I've got to watch it. I haven't had a chance to yet, but I'll get right on it. Ian's a vegan. You know, he's a vegan. He talks about that. I guess he had some French fries recently, a little un-vegan-y, because maybe they're cooked with animal fats. But sticks to it. Joe does make fun of him for falling asleep a lot. Like I said near the intro, that is true. Maybe he doesn't have a lot of energy, but veganism seems to work for him. So that's how it goes. That's it. And here's the thing with Ian's comedy too. Like, some people are Rogan fans for the podcast, right? And they do love him for the UFC, but maybe they're not all that into stand-up comedy, period. Or maybe they just don't find Joe as maybe one of their favorite comedians, which in a lot of ways I find hard to believe. It just means you don't really know Joe's comedy. Like, he is really one of the best. I get to see him live a couple of times a month, and I get to see him also doing a show called Stand Up on the Spot, which I'd love to go to, even if he's not there, just because of all the great comics that were there. Pete Holmes was there the last time I went, and you get to see these comics that you just throw topics out from the audience and they have to make something happen. And I really do think that only the most talented comedians can really quickly turn something hilarious out of nothing. And I get to watch Joe do it a lot. Like, it's no joke. Like, the whole crowd, well, it is a joke. The whole crowd is cracking up. Like, he's really very fucking good. But my point, if you don't think that he's that great, one thing that you should listen to him about is when he says someone's a killer, he's 100% right. Joe knows that about comedy. When he talks about Joey Diaz maybe being the funniest guy ever, or Brian Callen being definitely the funniest dude in a captive audience, like once you get him into a party, like that is it. He is the funniest dude. When he's talking about Ian Edwards, the same thing. Absolute killer. I think I'm going on too much about how good Ian Edwards is, but I really want people to pay more attention to his comedy, because it will make him make more comedy, and selfishly I'll get to see more specials and more comedy that he's doing. I mean, he's that fucking brilliant. Love it. Jamie gets really upset at the beginning of this episode, only joking, but they're talking about French fries. Who has the best French fries? In-N-Out, McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. The French fry debate is back. This is not the first time Joe's brought this stuff up. I think that's when he starts Podcast Hungry. he gets immediately into what's the best French fry. Maybe that's like his Achilles heel for junk food. So if you ever find yourself needing to bribe Joe Rogan on a very small level, maybe get him some French fries. See how that goes. But Jamie gets very upset about who's thinking whose is the best. Who do you guys think? What do you guys think? Best French fries? I'm just not that picky. I don't think that there any French fries all that terrible, but at the same time, it's not the most important thing. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, what's the best ketchup? I'm there for the burger. I mean, if you're going for French fries, whatever. I think it's weird when I see someone just order French fries. I'm like, you do know they have burgers, right? Oh, well. Eat your own. Do your thing. Do your thing. Since Starbucks is recently being accused of being racist, like with the Hotep Jesus guy going in and getting his free coffee, Joe pointed out that more homeless people, at least in the LA area, are just camping in Starbucks. Now, I say that they've been camping in there, using up all the electricity and plugging 5 devices in with all their camping gear for the last 3 years of me living in LA. But maybe it is getting worse. I don't know. It was an interesting observation. But I saw some pretty disturbing facts the other day about the homelessness in LA, and it wasn't good. I don't want to go over it because it's kind of, I don't know if they're correct, and it puts a really tough light on the homeless people, but it was an awful rise in like every type of crime involving them, and pretty rough. And I have to say, I work at a bar in Santa Monica, and sometimes you'll have to do the door, like work on the door if like our door guys don't show up and we're just short staffed, so you just got to sit there for a minute and check IDs. We get some crazy homeless people, no doubt. One of them a few months back threatened to shoot me, so we had to call the police. He didn't have a gun, it turned out, but still, it's like, whoa, dude, I'm barely making minimum wage, chill out, I don't want to get shot. And all I asked him, and I shit you not, is, hey buddy, are you from LA? That's all I asked. I guess that's not the question to ask crazy homeless people. Anyway, Joe talked a little bit about positioning of the podcast, which I thought was cool, on his conversation with Ian Edwards. And he talked about maybe the idea that he would get the podcast kind of downtown so that the backdrop would be like a city view, which is kind of like how like the late night TV hosts do theirs, and like some news shows do it that way, just where it kind of shows the city. I'm glad Joe didn't. I really like the style that Joe kept, just with the red curtains and the pictures behind him, and it's like a closed-in room. I think that's better. I think it's too distracting to have like shit going on, and they'd probably be, depending on the time of the day, the lighting would be weird. He'd be talking about what's going on outside. I think it would be more distracting. It would certainly take away from the conversation for me when I'm watching it on YouTube. But I guess it doesn't really matter if you were just downloading the audio. It wouldn't really make a difference there. The Android iPhone debate. They go over it. I guess Ian Edwards has an Android phone. I feel like he does because he's just not that bothered about what's cool and what's not. But I have Android phones. I have mostly. I think I've had one iPhone once, and it was good. I did like it. Like they kind of work better, it seems, than Androids. But fuck me, they're both doing incredible shit. I'm just not worried about it, But they talk a little bit. There's that stigma when you get a text and you're an iPhone person from an Android, it pops up green. And it's like, oh, you don't have the blue. But it's just like, it's kind of comical, but it's just useless. It's like, what? Who gives a shit? I say the more competition, the better. Even with Huawei phones. And please don't get on my case about being un-American and supporting the Chinese. Look, I'm sure everyone's spying on us some way anyway. And if somebody comes out with a really fucking superior phone that's cheap, it's like a third the price of an iPhone and twice as good. I don't know. You, by all means, you can look at all the porn I download, or I guess you don't download it, do you? Just watch it. You can look at all the shit that I Google, all the silly questions I have. I don't have enough to hide to where I'm too worried about it, and I am just not wealthy enough to spend too much on on a fucking expensive ass model. So yeah, companies out there, please make cheap phones that are awesome, and you're allowed to steal a little bit of my data, maybe not too much. Don't get into my bank account, because I have like $40 in there. I'm going to need that this week. There was an interesting quote that Joe threw out, which I thought just, I don't know, it was kind of inspiring, but it was fatigue makes cowards of men. And they were talking about some sort of training and all different types of things. And it's very true. When I'm at jiu-jitsu and I'm completely wiped out, I go up against certain opponents and I'm way afraid, because I know how hard they go and I know I don't have the energy to defend myself. And that quote just really resonated. Fatigue makes cowards of men. I like that a lot. You know, I wonder how brave you can be when you're so exhausted you can barely move and you know that like pain is coming. You just, I don't know if you could be. It's one of those things. And then lastly, they kind of end on a bit of a global warming note, which I think everyone's thinking about, especially since the earthquakes in LA, even though they're not global warming related, but anything fucked up that's like that, you know, too much rain or the temperature or whatever. It's like people start thinking about what's going on around them. And the global warming debate shot up, and Joe talked about how he once rented a place in Malibu, like right by the beach. I'm in Santa Monica, and I only live like 6 blocks from the beach, not very far at all, but I'm up a hill. And Ian Edwards made the joke that maybe if there was global warming and the waters receded inland, sure, it would cause a lot of damage, but then there would be a new beachfront property. And I was thinking that's quite funny, because that is exactly what would happen to my place. Not that I'm promoting global warming, but yeah, I think that would be quite funny. Just to have all of a sudden your property that wasn't worth anything to be very expensive. I'm sure that must happen, right, in different places. You know, when big floods come in or when waters just rise and that's it. It's like, oh, I now have beachfront. Love that. Lastly, something amazing, big announcement for them. Joe Rogan is doing a show with Dave Chappelle. I think it's in either Washington or Portland. I can't remember exactly. How epic is that? I cannot wait for it. It definitely means Dave Chappelle is going to be on the podcast. I just could not believe it if he does not come on. Maybe he really hates podcasts and he won't come on. He won't do them. If that's the case, that's a damn shame. But this is as close as it's going to get, so we'll see. And Ian Edwards is opening up for them. So what an incredible opportunity that is for Ian. And again, just one of my favorite comics. Love him to death. Cracks me up every single time I see him. Very, very good. And a good conversation as always. Loved it. Guys, thank you so much for downloading. I really appreciate it. To each and every one of you, follow me on Instagram at Joe Rogan Experience Review. And you can message me there. That's like the easiest way to tell me how I'm doing, or any suggestions for things I can do. But that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.